Hello, everyone, and welcome to my August reading journal wrap up. And I did a quick little flip through of my July reading journal, and I wish I had slowed it down more, but I didn't. But oh my goodness, I barely used it that month, man. I have basically been in a pretty rough reading slump these past few months, and the book I finished may or may not have been to blame for that. Actually, it was a mixture of a few things. One of them being the book I was reading, I wasn't that invested in, and the other thing being Death Stranding 2 came out, and that was a game I really, really wanted to play and was looking forward to, so that's what I did with my time. As you can see, I already started setting up August and have basically already finished my cover page. It Because I barely used my journal last month, I decided to not invest too much time in the setup as I might have in previous months because in July I absolutely loved that setup. The color palette was great. I thought it was beautiful and I barely used it. So I didn't want that to happen again. So this is kind of my in between of it not being completely bare bones, but also not using all of my really pretty stationery. So yeah, you saw how pretty simple the cover page was with just the title of the month, a little bit of washi tape and a sticker. I think I go back and add some like dots and maybe a few more stickers, but honestly, not much. Here we have the main part of my entire wrap up, which is how I keep track of what books I'm reading when. It's just for fun. I completely got this from Aaron Smith on YouTube. And it's, yeah, genuinely, it's just something that's visual for me. And I just like drawing lines. What can I say? The stickers I'm using are from the Sticky subscription. This one was for, I want to say July, but I could be wrong. One of my main things when I decorate is the good old classic washi tape layering. And you'll probably see that in most, if not all, of the setups I do, since I just find it such a simple and effective way to decorate. And then I always like to embellish those little washi tape sections with a sticker, with like a larger sticker. It's something that's like so basic, I think, but works well. In this spread, I usually have a maybe next list, which is just there if I need something to reference. I'm not much of an emotional reader. I tend to plan books out in advance of when I'll read them, so that is usually what my maybe next is for. And then on the other side, I have my books read, which, as you will see, I put pictures of the books I have read, finished reading, or started reading in the month. Yeah, here I go adding the polka dots with this Zig Dot pen marker, not pen. And I do, in fact, add some to the beginning. I add more later on, but in the span of starting the setup and finishing it, I somehow misplaced that exact color and had to use a different brown. And here you will start to catch a glimpse of the book that I have been struggling with since the end of June. I was reading a lot of books per month until I started reading that book. And yeah, I think it was a mix of not really getting into the book, and also I had just finished a book I really like, as well as what I said earlier about Death Stranding coming out. So it was just a perfect storm for me to not be into it. Right now, I'm setting up a statistics page, which by the end of this month is going to look pretty hilarious. As I finished one book. I started reading another, but I did not finish that until some point in September. I also like to include a little log of when I bought books. And also in the beginning of my journal, I have a log of the library books I have taken out because I like to see roughly how much I saved by using the library instead of buying the books. I like to do this little simple trick that's outlining the lettering I've done just to make it pop a little bit, especially if I use a lighter color like I did here. I have this set of like pastel Crayola super tips that I have really been enjoying using. I also like to include a little section for some other media I consumed throughout the month because I don't just read books. I listen to a lot of music. I'm trying to listen to more music because I tend to just listen to the same albums over and over and over again. And sometimes I get sick of it too. So I like to expand that taste a bit more. And also, I watch a lot of movies with my friends. Why do I feel like this little washi tape bit at the bottom really is like the cherry on top of this spread? I just think it really looks nice and tied it all together. And here is where I realized I couldn't find the original dot marker that I was using, so I had to settle for this one. I say settle, but I think the color went a lot better than with the one I used originally. And there we have my initial setup done. And for the rest of the video, I will be showing you my updates. And here we have the continuing line of me reading this book. First, we're starting out with what I consider to be one of the movies of all time, Mystery Men. This movie was a movie I saw probably when I was way too young. My mom loves it. It's like the funniest movie to her. And of course, she wanted to introduce my sister and I to it as soon as she could. So she did. And I feel like this movie really influenced our sense of humor. It is a movie about a group of wannabe superheroes trying to be superheroes, and they include characters such as Mr. Furious, whose superpower is to get angry, the Shoveler, who shovels real good, and Invisible Boy, who can only turn invisible when no one is watching. So yeah, like I think it's based off of a comic series, but it really genuinely is one of my favorite movies, even though I think it's considered a flop. Up next, another movie I watched was the new Superman movie. My friends and I decided to watch this during our movie night. And honestly, it was pretty good. It was better than what I had expected. I appreciated that they didn't give you much on the origin story of Superman, as we have seen that so many times. I'm sure we're all sick of origin stories at this point and reboots. So I liked that. I felt like the pacing was a bit off, though. There definitely could have been less things going on. I was also geeking out over Hawk Girl being in this because I absolutely loved Hawk Girl as a kid. Like in the Justice League cartoon, she was one of my favorites. So when I saw her, I was like overjoyed. I don't think my friends are as thrilled as I was about that though. But yeah, too much going on, but overall, pretty decent movie. And here we have me finally putting stuff in my other media section. Later on, I realized that maybe I printed these out a bit too big. But fortunately for this month, it managed to be just the right amount of size, or right amount of space, I should say. Oh, look at that. I was not updating the reading tracker here. I sometimes just get excited and like to use the reading tracker when I'm not filming that, so. And I'm also adding books I read. I finally conquered that one book that I was struggling through for 2 months. And it was like almost exactly 2 months to the date that I was reading this book. But before we can get into that, I'm going to finish up the other media that I consumed this month. The first of the two being The Goonies, which it's not new to me. I did watch at least parts of this movie when I was younger. I'm not sure if I watched the whole thing, but there are certainly parts that I remember seeing. And this is a classic, you know. It's whimsical, it's kind of childish, and I mean that in a good way because this movie is for kids. And like it's yeah, it's for kids, but it's also for all ages. This movie definitely gives me the vibe of like a kid telling you about things they did over the summer that are absolutely wild, and you know for a fact that this did not happen, but the kid's insisting that it did. But, and it's like, dude, we know you did not capture like a bunch of criminals. It's okay, you don't have to continue with this story. But they insist. And I think that's also part of the charm of it. It was also funny seeing like all these actors that I've seen in things in the modern day too. Like, for example, Josh Brolin was kind of funny to see. I'm like, oh my god, he's like so young. Also, I don't know the actor's name, but he was also in what's it called? The Lost Boys. A lot of people from movies in like the mid to late 80s that I saw in this movie that I thought was fun. And last of all, we actually have a album that I listened to. So a while ago, Spotify recommended one song from this band to me, and I really liked it. And it took me until now to finally listen to one of their albums in full. The genre is power metal, and this is definitely a band that it adds to my theory that power metal is basically an offshoot of musical theater, but for people who were too shy to be in musical theater or felt like they didn't fit in with musical theater. Because like I could like the opening song gives gives such a concept album or like overture to a musical. It was wild. Everything I found was super catchy. I really liked it. It was exactly my cup of tea as far as music goes. So I will definitely check out more from this group. And finally, we have the book that I conquered, and I had to conquer it by listening to the audiobook version of it. And the audiobook version of it was not great. The narrator was so boring. It made me appreciate so many more audiobooks that with narrators that really try to make it more of a performance than just reading. The amount of solitaire I played while listening to this audiobook was also pretty ridiculous. It was just something I had to keep busy doing something else so I could actually finish this. But yeah, anyway, after beating around the bush for all this time, the book I am talking about is The Witch King by, I don't even think it's just Witch King by Martha Wells. And I was actually pretty excited to read this book. It is by Martha Wells, which, if you weren't aware, she has written a lot of science fiction, one of the most notable being the Murderbot Diaries, which is entertaining, but I have a hard time reading, not so much because of like the plot or anything, or I have issue with her writing in that series. Murderbot has just such a specific personality that it irks me so much. I'm like, why are you pushing people away and then complaining about stuff when you could just ask for help? Anyway, yeah, this book was a bit of a disappointment for me. I really wanted to enjoy it. I gave it so many chances considering I did end up with downloading the audiobook to just so I could finish this book. But ultimately, it just didn't click for me. Like, it's not a bad book necessarily. It's just not what I wanted. It talks about, or not, it doesn't talk about, one of its selling points is basically being found family. And one of my favorite things about found family is the development of that family and how they have come to know each other and work through potential differences. Except that we don't see that in this book. Maybe it's because I was like zoning out in certain parts, but there were parts that just felt like there were time skips that weren't clear and it was jarring and skipped over events that maybe we should have had in this book. There are two timelines, a modern day and a past day. And I appreciate how they were lined up to reflect what was going on in the story. However, it was too much for a 400-page book. Too much had to happen for it to work. And it ended up being in the detriment of the characters, or to the detriment of the characters and character development. I don't understand how characters got close to each other, because we never got to see that. I don't understand why certain characters hated each other. Like, yeah, I get the theory behind why, but just because someone broke a law once and by accident, I don't understand why someone would absolutely hate them. Like, not hate, but like despise and would kill them for it. It was just things weren't connecting. And maybe if this was a duology or a trilogy, it would have been better. But yeah, it was just way too lacking for me. There was also a betrayal in this book where it was not built up to. Like, yeah, it made sense for that character to betray them because their origin was a bit suspicious for traveling with them. but it just didn't play out well. There was not much suspicion that the main character, the point of view character Kai, had, and he somehow knew. We're in this character's head, basically, but we don't have him being suspicious and connecting the dots about this. It's just, whoa, this character was actually working for this guy the entire time, and no, we don't get to know how Kai figured this out. I will say, despite my issues with like the actual plot, I loved the world building. I thought it was very unique. I liked that it wasn't quite Eurocentric fantasy. And I do appreciate that there's a lot more fantasy authors these days that are willing to expand beyond your Eurocentric fantasy. And I am happy to find those authors and read their books. So if anyone has recommendations, I would love to hear them. But yeah, the world felt real. It felt it was well understood. And I really liked the casual queer representation in this book. I love when it's not a big deal and it's just there and everyone accepts it. And it made sense. Like it wasn't weird in any way. There was also some ambiguous relationships too. And I liked that gender was not connected to the physical form. Also, can we take a moment to just appreciate the angle I'm writing at? And this is actually me writing at less of an angle than I usually do. I am someone who writes at a complete 90-degree angle. If I don't, I have the worst back slant, which is kind of weird. I blame it on how I hold a pen, but I blame a lot of my issues on that. Like, you see how I'm holding my hand, like how I'm gripping the pen when I'm not writing anything? It's how you should properly hold a pen. But then I start writing and it's not right. It's just, what am I doing, man? We may never know. Anyway, back to the book. I think that in the end, that this book really suffered from telling and not showing. And it's honestly generous of me to have given it 3 full stars. Maybe 2.5 would have been better. But I have read worse books and given them a 2.5. So, also, I can tell this book wasn't originally meant to be part of a series because now there's going to be a sequel. If it was originally meant to be part of a series, there wouldn't just be all of this stuff happening in 400 pages. That could have taken many more pages to just establish more and to get attached to characters more instead of just being thrown characters left and right. So, yeah, I'm not gonna read the sequel. I don't have any interest in reading the sequel. Maybe if I get like super duper bored, but I don't think that's gonna happen. And here we have the funniest thing in this entire setup, which is my stats page being like one book I read. Which favorite? Witch King. Honorary mention. Witch King. Least favorite. Witch King. Yeah, I even write LOL. First read, Witch King. Second read, or last read, Leviathan Wakes. And let me tell you, after Witch King, that book was such a beautiful breath of fresh air. Yeah, I like to keep track of the books I've read in the year, just in this little spread at the front where it's just an image of the cover as well as the star rating of the book. if you hear any jingling, my cat is walking around. I love going through my beginning of the book pages and just editing stuff. And with that, we come to an end of my August reading journal wrap up. Thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, I forgot to add the star ratings to this part. Let's just appreciate that I did read one book on my maybe next. Started reading that. And I will say that for September, there is another book on that list that I am reading. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me for the past almost 25 minutes. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll stick around for September's wrap up, whenever that comes out. And thanks so much for watching. Bye.